My friends, welcome to my home. My name is Robin Black. I'm a martial artist. I was also the creative consultant and the fight coordinator on Dark Side of the Cage Season 1. I do a podcast called Deeper Into the Cage. These are the full-length conversations from Deeper Into the Cage. We call it Cage Talk. And today we are going to have the full conversation that I had with Coach Edmond Tarverdyan. Edmond was and is Ronda Rousey's boxing coach. People think they know a lot about him, but they sure don't. Before I talk to Coach Edmond, take a look or a listen to the Dark Side of the Cage trailer for the Ronda Rousey episode.
Ronda Rousey,
first female champion of the UFC.
She's the one going on The Tonight Show.
Every fight that she won, she finished. Why would this be any different?
I couldn't believe that Ronda Rousey could lose the fight.
It was a moment of this silence.
I didn't see that happening.
It was too much.
If you do this sport, you're going to get concussed.
That's a lot of brain trauma.
Ronda hid the fact that she experienced these concussions.
It was very tough because I made a promise.
What was the promise?
That she'll never lose.
Dark Side of the Cage, Wednesdays at 10 on Vice.
Coach Edmund, thank you so much for hanging out with me, my friend. When we were trying to click in, you literally just said to me, I teach people how to fight, but I don't know about technology.
Yeah, I swear I don't nothing. I've never bought an app, so she was like, download the app first and then put this link there. So she was telling me how to click the side button. I've never ordered anything, nothing in my life. She's done everything, so I just taught people how to fight. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, this is life now, right? Like, it's like being a specialist, spending your time specializing in things is what we do, is what everybody does now. You teach people to fight.
Yeah, that's it. I guess I don't like putting in time in computers. Like, it's not my thing, you know, so.
I hear you, man. Thank you for hanging with me, and thank you for chatting with us for the series Dark Side of the Cage. Have you seen any of the episodes?
Yeah, I watched some of it. Yeah, I watched the Diego one yesterday. I was watching it. Yeah, they sent me some links. Awesome. I like it.
Yeah, it's the Kimbo story. We loved.
Yeah, the
telling
Kimbo
that
I watched
story.
too. Not all of it, but I watched some of it, parts of it. Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, from streets to, mainstream. Yeah, real arenas. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, of course, we're talking about Ronda and her story. I mean, I'm a fan, right? I'm an unbiased. I'm biased. I'm a fan of Ronda. I have been. What she did, how she was able to pioneer fighting and get women fighting. What did you think the first day you met Ronda Rousey?
First day. And, I had a lot of fighters back then when she came in. They told me she's like, Olympic bronze medalist and, good judokai. But, in my head, I was like, I didn't think of her much. I didn't look at her. I didn't think a judokai could do what she, would do. Or there was no woman, of course, in the UFC. And we had fighters in the gym, fighting on Showtime, boxing, and world champion fighters, Victor Chinian. So we had big names in the gym. So they didn't even pay attention to her at all. So I didn't think of it much. I'm trying to think what I did think of her. So it was like, it's like a blank, something blank coming to me. Nothing, basically.
Well,
not much. But I remember some of the guys like Manny Gamburi and those guys saying, oh, she's an Olympic bronze medalist in judo. And maybe not so much just that word, Olympic bronze medalist, and just move on to the next conversation. Nothing about her much.
And I mean, that's an amazing truth. But there must be a moment where between having a busy gym and high level boxers fighting and maybe she's a bronze medalist over there, and one day you notice. One day you're like, hey, wait a second, there's something going on. Do you remember that turning point?
Yeah. So she was coming, and then she got in an argument with me. That part I've already said, about training her, getting on the pads with her, and she's driving all that way. So after that, I started working with her. Then her first amateur fight, it was actually the manager at the time. When he called me, I was around the area where they picked up a fight in a local gym, and it was a little gym fight, basically amateur fight. So when I went in, when I wrapped her hands and how excited she got and how she warmed up, and I saw her focus, her motivation to do this, and how her, her spirit, her intensity about getting in there and wanting to finish the fight and staying so focused during the warm up. And, you know, her attitude, well, I was like, this girl's got something, you know, when she went in there and within seconds, just, you know, what I told her, she nailed it. Just, you know, move forward right away. Don't worry about them kicking or anything. Keep your hands tight and get in that clinch and do your judo and, you know, submit her. And she did that within seconds. And the way she pounded the cage with her legs, you know, her feet jumping up and real focus. I was like, all right, this is like another Victor Chinian I have, but a girl version, you know, real somebody that wants to finish the fight every second. So after that, I knew she was something special, which she has the fighting spirit, of course, and not afraid to fight. Actually, gets more excited and shines in that octagon when she gets in there. You know, it's a they you know special fighters like that. I always say they like glow. You know, in that octagon or in that ring. You know, when they get in there, you see that the spirit is different. You know, they're fighters that want to do damage every second. Basically, you know, they're ready. They're there to fight. So you're gonna have your hands full, regardless. You know, with the outcome of the fight, win or lose. But so she was one of those. I noticed that, and then of course all the other fights we picked up, and then going to Canada and getting the fight with Strike Force. You know, getting a call and then getting in there. So you know, it just started blowing up. Yeah.
So there's a few things I want to ask you about related to that. One is you've coached hundreds of fighters, low level, mid level, top level.
Yes.
100 fighters, even the great ones, 80 of them, have a hard time being close to their best in a fight. In a gym, they're better. 10 or 20 of them are better on fight night. Ronda was one of those. And is that an accurate statement, first of all?
Accurate
And if
statement.
so, yeah.
Accurate statement. Yeah, I was just talking about that yesterday. I have a kid just came down from Russia, and the kid is, you know, when I watch him, I know that he's doing his 100% in that octagon, in the ring, you know, wherever he's fighting at, and he doesn't know much, you know. His skills, I would grade it as a C, you know, like he knows maybe like 30-40% striking, but the kid goes for it and he strikes, and it's unbelievable. When I watched him, like, okay, you could do some damage, you could be a great fighter, and he's good, you know. So I made some calls, and we'll get him out there soon. So but some people have that, you know, some people have that. You see what ability they have, they do it 110%, 200, whatever you want to call it, in that octagon, in that ring. And some people are great in the gym, and when they get in there, they do the opposite. They give their 30-40% of what they have. So it's hard to see, but no, Ronda, of course, she was good in the gym, great in the octagon, both. She was great in the gym and great in the octagon. So different mindset.
I remember, so I was speaking, I just kind of got to know Sean Shelby at the time. I had a fighter, I managed a young fighter named Nick Denny who had come up. And Sean and I were speaking, and he was telling me about Ronda. And I was saying, I don't know if I buy it. I don't know if I, and he's like, no, it's real. I said, I don't know, you know. And then I saw her fight Sarah Kaufman. I'm from Canada, and I commentated lots of Sarah's fights. And Sarah was the baddest ass there was. And Ronda marched over, got the grip, got the position, got the throw, got the finish. And suddenly I'm like, oh shit, okay, it's real, right? It's real. And it was one of those things, you know.
During that
suddenly
fight,
you know
how she bob and weaved using the triple double jab, and she bob and weaved under McMahon's, you know, jab, and got her shoulder underneath her armpit and started, you know, working her throw. She hasn't been boxing by that time. She wasn't been boxing professionally, or like 5-6 years. You have boxers getting in there and they can't bob and weave and slip their way into the inside to start fighting on the inside. So she did that. That's what I'm saying. She had it naturally too. You know, some people have it. You know, so in that instinct, her mind is working and she's going. You know, it's natural. So
yeah. In your lifetime as a coach, and you've got many chapters ahead of you, I know the answer to this. We never saw this amount of attention around a fighter, right? And do you think you'll ever see that again, where suddenly you're around an audience that is so broad and they don't really, you know, they're not even fight fans, they just become fans of this person? It must have been a wild thing to experience.
yeah, Yeah, it was. I wish it happens again. Not with me, of course. I wish, but it is once in a lifetime, you know. So I don't know who the next fighter would be, but during around this time, and then after we saw Conor McGregor do a lot of great things, you know. But yeah, mainstream, she is, you know. When I witnessed that when we went out to Brazil and all those kids and all the people on the streets, you know, like really like it was different. It was not only an athlete, it was a female doing something that men have a hard time doing, finishing fights like that, with that intensity, with that speed, power, with that nastiness, you want to call it, and how great she looked doing it. And yeah, I don't think I'll have another one, but I hope someone does,
there aren't
yeah.
there aren't going to be many like that.
Yeah.
Um, they something sometimes when people become that big that fast, the audience turns on them, and I'm shocked. I don't know why. I don't know where it comes from, but there's a segment of the audience that for some reason dislikes her now. Do you see that, and does that make any sense to you?
I don't know. I think they want her more around. I think she could turn that around by being more around MMA, the UFC, and that will change. I think she could do that. I think that she's not around and she's not, in the sport much involved, and people do miss, and some talk, some don't. So, I think the dislike happens more there because people do miss her and they want her. That's what I believe. So it's the internet, is we know the internet, anybody could write anything. So, but
Yeah.
when she's around and she goes out, I mean, people love her. I've never seen her in so besides the internet, I think she's loved and everybody loves her. She's great. So, in the internet, those writings, I think more some of them miss her and want her around. So it just, they just say something just because she's not out there anymore.
Yeah.
She gets her, she wants to come out and be involved a little bit more with the fight game. They will love her. That's no problem. Everybody loses, everybody wins. I don't think there's a reason for anyone to dislike a champion that gave so much to the woman
Yeah.
and to the sport. So what is there to dislike? It's not like she did anything personally to anybody's mom or dad. You know what I mean? It's
That's
like,
right.
why would you dislike her so much? It's like, all right, she said something you don't like. It's okay. Not everybody's gonna like everything you say. Not everybody's gonna like everything I say. Not everybody's gonna like what you say,
100%.
right? So that's
Yeah.
life. So I mean, there's not much we should hold on to, for each other, dislike each other for
100%.
those reasons. Yes.
Yeah, 100%. And you're very aware. Your instincts on that are very, very, I think, on point. If she appeared tomorrow and took everybody's call and did every podcast and did every photo shoot and showed up cage side and everything, people would have opinions. They would debate her. They would love her. She'd be in every conversation. And it's actually an incredibly difficult challenge today to not be everywhere. And I admire that, to be honest. Her and Travis, their family, their ranch, their kids, they do it on their own terms. And that's something most people don't do and can't do. And I admire that too, to be honest.
Definitely,
You
definitely.
know?
She's happy. I actually was speaking to her yesterday. I have to get back to her. Actually, I spoke to her the day before, and then I haven't gotten back to her. So yesterday I was supposed to get back to her, but I will today. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'm
I
glad.
talk to her occasionally. She's awesome. She's happy, healthy. Babies are happy.
Good.
Healthy. So that's very important for her.
Yeah, that's great. So, Coach, what's going on with your world right now? Your fighters, who are your young ones you're pumped about? What's happening in your gym?
So yeah, I have real good young ones, but 18, 19. What I learned with Edmond Tarverdyan, I had him since he was a 10-year-old kid, by me. So by 12 we were in the top 10 already, um, looking good, and then boom, So I see MMA, physical. They need more physical. They need to be, very physically strong. So I don't want to get all the other ones young in there. I think their body needs to be more developed. It's not boxing to only win with skill sometimes, and matchmaking over there is a bit different. So the UFC guys in their 30s, I think their body peaks. There's so many different arts you have to learn, and each art you learn, you put in time it's going to be at least 15, 20 years, to master boxing, kickboxing and grappling. And so I'm not going to rush anybody. So I have a lot of good young ones. I want them to mature a little bit more, get older, get their body stronger, a lot of wrestling competition, grappling. They could still compete, but when I turn them pro, they're going to be more seasoned and, older, wiser. So I saw that was the reason, but we wanted to make him special also, youngest champion. And we challenged ourselves, at a point 11 and 0, 10 knockouts in the first round. He was looking good, but, still fighting in there. So then I have Melsick right now. Bagdasaryan fights on the 22nd card with John Silva. So that should be exciting fight. And yeah, I have a few young ones and, boxing, always growing fighters, young ones trying, break in there. But that's about it, enjoying it. My son is already 13, so traveling, playing soccer, all over the world. He's going to be in Brazil coming month, and he's just always traveling, playing in Spain, Argentina, all over the place. So young, but, trying to do it with the best in the world. So if you want to be the best, you got to train with the best. So American soccer, I like it. They're growing, but still not at the level that we should be. So, I choose for him to be always outside traveling and playing.
Amazing. For you as a coach and a martial artist, a boxer, a combat artist, you will forever, we hope to evolve, become better martial artists, become better teachers, become better people. Where is your game changing? What are you seeing that's different? How is the game of fighting changing for you?
It's exciting. A lot of fighters are well-rounded now, I like it, what I see, when they come, but it really doesn't matter. Even if you're great at what you do and, you have the fighting spirit, I think that fighting is something that's not going to change so much, You could have fighters in the 60s, and they're great, like the Dorans, like the Leonards, those guys were badass. So, I don't think that now, oh my God, somebody comes in there, has something more special. Actually, now guys are so more, they see fights so much more. It's so much more around. So for the fans, it's a little bit different, than getting excited for that one big fight that's on a Saturday or a Sunday, So you see a lot of great fighters more, good fighters. I wouldn't say all of them great, but good fighters. You see much more. And the defense is so strong now. Physically, everybody's so strong, and people, I think, don't want to get hit so much, nowadays. And I love, like, Usyk is a great fighter. Like, I watched the boxing heavyweight, for example, But if you go back and you watch the heavyweights back then, those guys threw down. There wasn't much damage. With Tyson Fury too. The defense is good. I mean, yeah, Usyk is great with his legs in and out. But I think he's a cruiserweight, that doesn't look like a real heavyweight boxing match for me. They don't fight on the inside, much more distance there just to be more healthy, not get too much hit on the head. I think now fighters want to, milk their way and making a lot of money without getting damaged, which is great. It's better for them. I'm happy for them. But I think, yeah, it's not like it's evolving so much that before the fights weren't as exciting or the fighters weren't as great,
Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah.
think.
I think
I
you're
don't
right.
see
I think
much of a difference.
the defense probably has been the biggest evolution. And you're right. For a lot of
Biggest.
them, I mean, you can't blame somebody who says, hey, could I make maximum money and take minimum damage? But as a
Damn,
viewer,
yes.
yes, we don't get the drama maybe that, and you're right, again, when it's every Saturday, it isn't the same as 30 years ago when there was two big fights a year, two meaningful fights a year. It's true. It's
Yes.
true.
Yes. And then I think when the physical ability rises, everybody's physically in great peak now. We have a lot of physical trainers and, nutrition, everything is so bigger. I think that people think that the damage of the fight might be more. I think it will be less because, two of them very physically strong. They're going to keep away from each other, touch and move. But when you have the natural fighters without that physical, they're going to put their heart on the line. When the heart is on the line, you're going to see more nastiness because now you see natural ability. The guys I had that weren't physically that strong and didn't train as hard, let's say, party, this, that, those guys, when they got in there, I saw every fight, it's a banging match. You watch, so it's much different.
Yeah.
Even you watch soccer now, everybody's physically strong. They want to be like, let's say, Mbappe. They want to throw the ball and run fast and physical. You don't see the technique, the art so much,
Yeah.
the messing around with the ball, and everybody wants to be so robotic and just move in right positions, go fast and score, and that's what the coaches want. But when you watch the old school players, even if they smoke, let's say, it doesn't matter. When they get the ball, they do
Yeah.
magic with the ball, like the Ronaldinho, those guys are
Yeah.
soccer players. That's what I think. So I tell my son, I'm like, play nasty a little bit with the
Yeah.
ball. Don't be too
Yeah.
much, just physical and robotic. We got that. We'll do that. Don't worry. Just play with the ball.
Yeah, that's good advice. Good advice. And I mean, that I have a 3-year-old daughter, and watching her just explore and play with anything. She does gymnastics, but that experimentation, that playfulness, that's what it is to be a great artist or athlete or performer, fighter, is that playfulness. But I do think these things move in pendulums. Everything will be a little very robotic and very strength and conditioning and very athletic, and then it'll be artistic. And I think that pendulum swings. And I think if your
I
son
love I
is
love the
thinking that way.
artistic and the
Yeah.
physical together. But if you have too
Yes.
physical together, sometimes it pushes away. You need that little bit negative and that smooth
Yeah.
fighter. The guys that are grinders, they don't care, about that. Just physical. Let's go. Let's throw down. Let your hands go. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, great chatting with you, Coach. Really, really enjoyed it a lot, and thank you so much. I'll send you the video of the Dark Side of the Cage, the Ronda Rousey episode, so you can see it. But you're wonderful in it, and thank you for giving us your time.
Can't wait to see it, man. Thank you. Thank you
Much
for
love.
everything. Much love.
Dr. Faisal, my friend, it is very, very good to see you. How are you, sir?
Robin, great to see you. Thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
I want to talk about Ronda Rousey. In particular, she spoke a lot about concussions and head injuries throughout her career as a judoka, a professional fighter, and a pro wrestler. You are a ringside physician, a doctor, a professor. Talk to me, and a martial artist, and you've had pro fights of your own. Talk to me about generalized thoughts about head trauma in professional fighting.
It's in general, I think it's a much more appreciated phenomenon now than what it used to be. But I would dare say, when Ronda was competing as an amateur in judo, I wonder what safety processes they had in place back then, because I suspect a lot of her injuries started as when she was a young woman competing in the sport, and I suspect she was competing since she was a very young, girl. And now as a woman who's competed in many different combat sports, including mixed martial arts, judo, even professional wrestling, all of those sports take a toll. And I think we're starting to get more appreciation of that in things like pro football and other sports. But in general, I'm so concerned that at those amateur levels, when we have our kids who are so young and so vulnerable, we're probably under recognizing concussions in many other sports. And I suspect by the time they come to the big leagues, they're already prone. They already have the substrate to be prone to more serious head injuries because of all the small concussions or small brain injuries they may have had coming up the way.
Rhonda's in her 30s. 25 years ago, a football coach, your judo coach, whomever might say, shake it off and get back in there, right? That was a common thing a couple of decades ago.
Oh, very common. I can even think when I was a young kid playing soccer when I was 6 or 7 years old, we'd be heading each other by mistake while going for the ball, and balls would hit us in the head, and you went to the sidelines for a little bit, but then you just brushed it off and you went right back in. And I think it was ignorance on the athlete's part. Obviously, we were just kids, but ignorance on our parents' part, ignorance on the coach's part. We just didn't, know a lot about it back then in the 80s, 1980s, 1970s, and 1980s. And even now, I'm still concerned that in many amateur sports, we still don't have that appreciation. I mean, hockey and football may be a bit different, but many other sports, I'm not sure. I mean, in boxing, for example, in amateur boxing, you could compete 3 or 4 times in one day, while you're in a tournament or going for the Olympic trials or competing at the nationals. You may compete multiple times a day, and you're taking headshots.
Yeah.
And often the athletes themselves, we're our own worst enemy, where we'll hide our injuries and so that we can go on and compete. And then our coaches and our therapists are not recognizing that perhaps we've been concussed. And so it leads to that vicious, second hit trauma, third hit trauma, that head trauma that our athletes are prone to. So I completely agree with you. There's lack of appreciation from athletes, from coaches, from parents, and from everyone.
Dr. Faisal, we hear fighters say, "Oh, I can't really get into my fight until I've been hit a few times," and there are different reasons for that. But I had a concussion. It was undiagnosed, but there was no question. I had many when I was fighting, or some for sure. There was one that I know I had. I didn't see a doctor about it, but when I was hit during sparring, the moment after I was hit, presumably concussed, I was able to actually see the sparring round much more clearly. And I remember time slowing, and I was really sharp for the remainder of the round. That phenomenon is a real thing, correct? Sometimes in the moment of a concussive or a heavy subconcussive blow to the brain, we can actually become sharper. Is that true?
I don't know if we can become sharper. I don't necessarily believe that. What I believe is you've trained yourself to such an elite level. And Robin, I know how hard you train when you were competing. Your body goes on autopilot. If I may give a personal experience, I was sparring at one of my local MMA gyms here. And in the fourth or fifth round of sparring, I took a shot just to the tip of my jaw, and I fell down. I was probably out for a couple of seconds, but I bounced right back up. I said, I'm okay. And then I sparred a full further round. And I competed, according to my coach, fairly well. I have no recollection of that. And in fact, after sparring, I forgot that my son was with me. I didn't know where I was. I thought it was October and it was April. And I was not making any sense. So an ambulance was called and I went to the hospital. And 6 hours later, I was back to normal. And then I went to a 1980s dance party the same evening. What I'm saying is I think our bodies go on autopilot. I have no recollection of that next round. And I think you might have recollection. Mm-hmm. You might even think you were super sharp. But I think it was just your own body being in elite shape, going on autopilot. And you're slipping punches, you're kicking. And if, to anybody watching you, if anyone, people who were watching that last round of sparring after I'd been knocked out, would think that I was kind of normal, but really what had happened was I was badly concussed. When I went to the hospital, I had no recollection of where I was, and I had an urgent CAT scan, and I was in hospital for about 6 or 7 hours before being discharged. So I think our bodies go on autopilot.
You work as a ringside physician at fights, including the UFC, and you are a lover of martial arts, and you compete yourself. But as a doctor, truthfully, this is an incredibly dangerous thing that we do. And sometimes we forget that, or in our presentation of it, we forget to mention it. But this is an incredibly dangerous endeavor, isn't it?
Very dangerous sport, but I love it. And I think we love it, and the fans of the sport love it. There's no getting around. I can't argue with a neurosurgeon or neurologist saying, you know what, I think this sport should be banned. What are we doing? But the art of fighting, the beauty of the martial art, the beauty of the movement of the body, the reaction time, the warrior spirit, the overcoming the odds, it's a very, very attractive sport for many of us for that reason. Both men and women love the sport for that reason. And I think rather than get into a moralistic debate about it, which I would lose with anyone, I think we just want to be in the situation where we make the sport as safe as possible to help preserve the beautiful things about the sport, the opportunities the sport gives to people who are up and coming in the sport, who may come from disadvantaged parts of our society, for example. It does so much positive for charity and so much positive stuff for our community. I think people forget that, but there's no doubt in my mind, as you said, we can't beat around the bush. It's a dangerous sport. It puts people's lives at risk. But I think it's the jobs of us, those of us who love the sport, to try to conduct it in such a manner that it's as safe as possible. Again, we've talked about this before. You can say the same thing for football, for hockey, for soccer, where there are significant head injuries as well. I mean, are we gonna ban those sports because of those risks? Of course not. But we want to try to make the sport as safe as possible.
You and I are in full agreement on this, as we are on so many things about martial arts and related things in life. I believe that my take today is that when a young person, Ronda was driven to compete in combat from a child. And no matter what you would have told her about the risks, pretty sure based on her own telling of her youth and her mother and her own story, she would probably continue. And I think for young people today, if you say, here are the true inherent risks of this, and they say, I hear you and I understand and I'm doing this anyways because this is what I was put on earth to do. And that's how I am. That's how you are. That's how many of the people that we know are. Get all the information and then decide. And I think we're able to today a little more tell a 14-year-old who absolutely loves to box or kickbox or do fighting, tell them it's risky and they say, I'm a free person and this is what I want to do.
I agree, but there's a fine line. I think, as you know, we have laws that protect people from themselves. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm saying is I agree with you 100% on that. But, my son competes in jiu-jitsu and he's done kickboxing as well. But as a parent, I can make sure I control how much he spars. As a parent, I can make sure that if I feel he took a hit that was unnecessary, that he takes the rest of the week or off for as long as necessary. When I'm watching him play football, kind of very similar things. So as parents, we need to take responsibility, but as coaches, as people who control the sport, we need to recognize that when someone is showing signs of head trauma, that we provide the care they need, and we take steps to make sure that they return to the sport in a healthy state and not become further damaged because of further head injuries. So at the same time, there's freedom. We all have our individual freedom and autonomy to do what we want to do with our bodies. But let's be honest, we also have laws that make us wear seatbelts so that we don't get injuries, or
coaches and parents and people of influence.
Yeah, so So what I'm saying is, maybe we were not in the position to say you can't do this, but we are in the position to put rules and safety measures in place so that we make sure the risk of head injury is lower than what it is right now.
And that brings us back to Ronda, who started as a young athlete, driven athlete, driven by family, driven by her own goals and objectives. How familiar are you with her story as she tells it, about injuries young and then injuries fighting in the UFC and competing while possibly concussed or otherwise affected by head trauma? How familiar are you with her story?
I really admire Ronda for what she said about what she's going through. And again, post-concussion syndrome is a real phenomenon. And I just want to say this because I'm very passionate about it, that it is underappreciated by the workplace. It is underappreciated by medical societies and by insurance companies and by the workplace especially, because I've seen a number of our own Canadian athletes having severe post-concussion syndrome whose own work will get in the way, in fact, be an obstruction to them getting the care they need, despite being having severe head injuries. And so it was wonderful for Ronda to speak about what she went through, because it makes other athletes going through that know that they're not alone. The depression, the anxiety disorder, the feeling life is not worth living, losing purpose in life. And thankfully with Ronda, after she suffered a number of bad injuries in the UFC against Holly Holmes and others, she felt the impact of post-concussion syndrome to its fullest. And luckily, honestly, had a very good support from her husband and other families to be able to get through that. But you go into a dark place. I had one patient, he's an MMA fighter, who is no longer competing, but had such severe post-concussion syndrome. He was having visions violent visions. He would not mind me sharing this with you, but visions of hurting his family and visions of dark things that are a very well documented part of post-concussion syndrome. And so people need to be able to share what they're going through, need to be able to access care. The workplace needs to be more understanding of what athletes and others go through who have head injuries and post-concussion syndrome. And I think Ronda's story is only going to help bring awareness to this, because we need athletes like her to speak up.
Thank you. Yeah, she's done a lot of good. She's done a lot of good for all women who fight, and now in this way, she's done a lot of good for everybody who fights. Doctor, as a fan and as a martial artist, tell me more of your thoughts of Ronda Rousey, the athlete. Let's take her challenges with injury out of the conversation. Just tell me your thoughts on Ronda Rousey as a martial artist and an athlete and a performer.
As a fan, because you're the expert. I'm kind of just as a fan. I have to say she really rejuvenated the excitement of watching athletes perform in mixed martial arts. Her ability to finish fights, her wonderful grappling skills, her personality, she really brought a lot of eyes to mixed martial arts, and I think did a lot of great, just for the sport in general, but also for women competing in the sport. And I'm a huge fan of hers, and I'm so happy that despite the difficulty she went through towards the end of her career, she was able to reinvent herself. With my own patients who have concussions that I follow, the most important thing that tends to be of concern is the loss of identity. And I think you've seen this in people you've interviewed, who, when at the end of their fighting career, even if they don't have bad head injuries, there's a loss of identity when they retire from the sport. When you're forced to leave the sport early because of concussions, I'm seeing several patients now who are losing their identity. What I love about Ronda Rousey is she reinvented herself. She got into sports entertainment, wrestling, and just reinvented her life, gave more priority to her personal life as well, and as a result has been able to overcome a lot of the symptoms she had of post-concussion syndrome. And that's something I think all of us need to learn from, because whether we have a head injury or not, we're in constant need of reinventing ourselves when we're unable to do what we used to do before. And this is the most important thing I see in athletes who have post-concussion syndrome. They lose their purpose. Fighting was everything for them. I had one athlete who told me when I was competing, and this is a high-level amateur boxer, national champion multiple times, said that when I was in the ring, I didn't care if I died, because this is what I loved, what I was doing. If I died, I died. My aim is to go to the Olympics and win a medal at the Olympics. This is all I want to do. And then when that opportunity was taken away because of head injury and concussions, it was a big impact on their mental health, and they are still struggling to find that purpose. So it's really important that we provide skills to our athletes to find a purpose, and Ronda Rousey is a great role model for that.
Thank you so much, Doc. I knew you'd have some really great insight. I really appreciate it. You come back and chat with me about Matt Hughes as well?
Oh, 100%. Matt Hughes is, again, probably one of the worst forms of head injuries we've seen. Unfortunately, he was quite affected by it. But again, he's a tribute to our other fellow citizens who battled such things, and he is living life to the fullest. He is recovered to a large degree, although he's still left with a lot of disability. But these head injuries that happen, whether it's from an accident, as in Matt Hughes' case, or from the sport, are always devastating.
All right. Thank you, Coach Edmund, and thank you for watching or listening wherever you get your podcasts. 2 more episodes of Dark Side of the Cage coming up. We got Matt Hughes and War Machine. 2 more podcasts. This has been a real pleasure. Thank you for hanging with me. Until next time, enjoy the hostilities, my friends.
Ronda Rousey.
First female champion of the UFC.
She's the one going on The Tonight Show.
Every fight that she won, she finished. Why would this be any different?
I couldn't believe that Ronda Rousey could lose the fight.
It was a moment of this silence.
I didn't see that happening.
It was too much.
If you do this sport, you're going to get concussed.
That's a lot of brain trauma.
Ronda hid the fact that she experienced these concussions.
It was very tough because I made a promise.
What was the promise?
That she'll never lose.
Dark Side of the Cage, Wednesdays at 10 on Vice.